Welcome aboard the Workplace Wiz, your audio gateway to the modern workplace. We designed this podcast as the place to discuss strategies, best practices, and share the industry insights with our expert guests. This program is brought to you by Yarooms, the workplace experience platform. I'm Cosmin Patlageanu, marketing professional and published author, and in this episode we are venturing into the fascinating intersection of technology and workspace dynamics with a special focus on digital communication. This tool that's revolutionizing the way we connect, collaborate, and also create in our professional lives. Today we are joined by Natalia Vorontsova, the Senior Account Manager at ProDVX Europe. With an impressive 18-year career in IT, Natalia has cultivated a rich expertise in sales, marketing, and business development. Her strategic approach to transformation and growth has constantly delivered results, and particularly in challenging markets. Her deep industry knowledge spans over several key regions, including the Middle East, Mediterranean, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe. Her career highlights include a strong focus on hardware brands, where she has successfully demonstrated the importance of integrating software and hardware to drive project success. Welcome, Natalia, to our podcast.
Thank you, Cosmin, and thank you for the introduction.
So just to set the stage and add a little bit of context and history on the topic, on basically digital communication and how it has evolved since we started adding tech to our workplace. Digital communication has a pivotal element. Has transformed our modern workplace. Now, the journey of office technology began with the humble typewriter, right, and the mechanical calculator, but it nevertheless set the stage for innovation in terms of workplace tools. Now, as the 20th century progressed, we introduced the personal computer in the 70s, which was a significant leap, and fundamentally it kind of changed the way tasks were performed and how information was managed and how we dealt with the office environment. Now, there was a sort of a ripple effect of this innovation throughout the workplace, and we can call it probably a digital revolution, which kind of brought us to a next level in terms of connectivity and efficiency. Now, in the late 20th century and early 21st century, internet was everywhere. So email emerged as a new standard in terms of instant communication and obviously replacing the slower processes we had in the past, like fax machines and the others, the post mail. Now, this digital leap was followed by the rise of mobile technology and smartphones, which we have everywhere. So this enabled professionals to communicate and collaborate from anywhere they were, basically at any given time. And the latest chapter in the story is the rise of digital signage and integrated communication platforms. Now, these tools not only enhance information dissemination, but also make sure that vital data reaches the right people at the right time. What we can do with this technology is basically anything from boosting morale or giving recognition to our teams and people, and even further enforcing safety protocols or integrating updates. Basically, sky's the limit over there. Now, looking at the future, probably integrating AI, machine learning, and everything connected will be a next step in terms of personalization and communications. Like, everything gets smarter and smarter. We are basically exploring the ways this technology are not just the additions to a physical office, but become an integral part in fostering a dynamic, engaged, and productive workplace culture. So, a question to you, Natalia: how does digital communication impact the overall experience for teams, for employees?
I think, first of all, digital communication enhances workplace experience by enabling a remote collaboration, which we actually saw during the corona. Business didn't stop. People kept on communicating. We all kept on working, and that actually brought a major breakthrough in the minds of management that people can work from home and they can continuously work from home. And of course, then workplace experience for every single employee is something that is connected to the corporate culture. This is where you are representing the company during your work hours. And then the company has to facilitate for all the employees the possibilities to work in the office, to work outside of the office, to work on the road, and to work to make our work as easy as possible. Correct?
Absolutely, and I like that that part where you mentioned that it's a part of company culture. Actually, because I've seen many times a lot of sometimes contradicting positions, right? So some are very much in favor of remote or hybrid. Some want everybody back to work, and depending, on the standpoint, some are right, the others are right as well, given the context. But I was thinking, now that you just mentioned, we went through a black swan sort of event, right? That radically changed basically overnight the way we worked, and nobody could have foreseen that. However, it was possible. So as you mentioned, business didn't stop. Many businesses thrived, right? Some of them went under, which was to be expected, but many of them thrived. So I would like to focus on those. Let's take the positives out
Like
of.
ProDVX is one of them. I mean, we grew
Politics is one of them.
really large during the Corona times, for example, as a company in terms of our turnover and in terms of contribution to the business.
Can you share more on that? I mean, how was technology central on your growth?
Well, business-wise, we were one of the few manufacturers on the market who kept on manufacturing, who kept on stocking. And eventually, during the Corona, we were the only ones, well, one of the few who actually had the stock. And we were also, after the Corona, because we kept on producing, we had the stock after the Corona. So that's how we managed to win a lot of market from our competitors. And of course, we continue the growth. And before the Corona and during the Corona, meeting room signage screens has been our main product, Android panel PCs, which are mainly used for meeting room signage. And yes, we noticed a lot that the company started tremendously digitalizing after employees went back to the offices. And very many companies started being more smart and started employing meeting room signage also with the possibility to book from the app or connect it to your, for example, if you book a meeting with your colleagues, you immediately have a suggestion of the room, and it's also automatically displayed on the room display, for example, either through the app or through your Outlook. And of course, ProDVX, as a major player in the industry, we actually profited from that. And I guess our management likes it.
So
was the right step?
So. Yeah.
Was the right product at the right place and at the right time of the development.
Absolutely. So you mentioned how companies accelerated their digital transformation processes. So what do you think triggered it? What made them adopt so quickly the new tech that they didn't have before, and also integrating it with different platforms?
I don't think it was new. I think it is already for a very long time hanging in the air for actually for maybe 5-10 years. And everybody heard about meeting room signage. Everybody knew about it. The technology was developing, and very companies thought it would be nice to have. And now everybody considers it as a commodity product. It's something normal to have in the office. While after Corona, the companies needed to adapt the workspace for their employees. And this was one of the ideas that they thought is really nice to have, to avoid, the overbooked rooms to give a possibility for the employees to meet up in the office, and so that they also have space. And if the meeting is, for example, emotional or in depth or requires brainstorming and so on, so that they can have a separate room, not just like, do it in the canteen or, at their, for example, sales island. It became like something we as a company and we as human resource managers, we want to facilitate workspace for our employees. And therefore, we're going to finally do it. And that happened more or less, in my opinion, during the Corona time and after Corona time. And now it's like really something like must have. Like it's not nowadays must have to have a laptop for every employee. So the same became meeting room signage nowadays, I think.
Absolutely. So I was thinking, when you mentioned the laptop, I used to have a phone, like a desk phone in my office for many, many years. And I could also, just pick it up and call my colleagues in other offices through the internal network. So it was something that you would have and you would use. At some point, they kind of vanished. Nobody used them anymore, or unless you needed to call somebody from a different country or something like that, you would basically have, if it's
well, I can
something that you normally do.
Cosmin, I don't know. In the Netherlands, you call a standard line with my extension number, you reach me on my mobile phone, or you call my mobile number, you also reach me on my mobile. It's also all connected. We also still have a standard desk phone, like with a line phone, but it's connected to the mobile phone of the company. I'm in the industry for more than 19 years. Okay, I started professionally working 19 years ago, and it wasn't normal back then to have a mobile phone from the company. It was something like really exceptional, and it was still old-fashioned Nokia and so on. And nowadays, you can't imagine, that your employer says, okay, you don't have a phone, or at least a SIM card, for if you have like the double SIM card phone, So it's the same happened a change in meeting room signage. It's something normal to have in the office. You would rather be surprised if you do not have any digitalization in your office rather than you do.
Yes, absolutely. It's become the new standard. As you mentioned, having a mobile phone it was a perk. So back in the day, it was like an extra feature that companies would want to attract you. You got the company car, the company phone. Those were like extra things you get on your, beyond the paycheck and everything. But nowadays, it's like it's a commodity. And speaking of which, this reshapes a little bit, right? The way we interact around the office. So you've been in this sector for quite a while. How was this transition from like the traditional office where you have somebody at the front desk and you would go and ask for directions, and then they would say, you go that way and you're going to see a sign, and on the sign it says whatever, and then that's the meeting room, versus now having a display outside basically every meeting room and the calendar, and it's interactive and you can play with it and book it and see who's ever booked and so on. So how was this transition? How was it from your perspective?
Well, it's I think that if we still speak about corporate world, we should divide the offices into the large offices and small offices. Of course, there are offices with 5 floors and 30 meeting rooms on each floor, but there are still offices like ours which are extremely digitalized, but we've got 3 meeting rooms and we have got a huge open space, and possibility to meet like with the corners, with the relax and just chit chat between the departments, or just like, have a lunch. There should be also separation. Like in our office, you don't really need a navigation. Yeah. So, but if we speak about, for example, hospital, which is more common for everyone, which is also they also have like offices where you have to meet, where you have to come, where you have an appointment, where you have to navigate yourself, which is also comparable to many people with huge corporations offices. So it's for me personally, it's much less common to look for a reception lady to ask where I have to be. Majority of the information is available on the screens. It's logical. It gives directions. It shows you where you have to go, which elevator you have to take. But also, which is very common nowadays in the offices, but as well in the hospitals, is like you check in to indicate that you have arrived at the location and you are waiting in the meeting room. So, and in some offices, you still do have a receptionist who is assisting you. On the other hand, the companies are moving more like where one of the employees of the department is coming over to shake your hand and guide you to the right room and ask you, do you want coffee or not? Milk.
Or you can press a button on the screen saying that you want a coffee.
Also one of the options, which is, by the way, I don't see a lot in Europe, but I see a lot in Dubai, for example, and in Middle East. They really like in comparison to Europe, in Middle East, they use large screens for meeting room signage, like 15-inch and 13-inch. Why? Because they have much more options, not only book a room, but also indeed order catering, order coffee, ask for more water, reserve, for example, a beamer, and so on. So I also see like a big difference between Middle East and Europe in terms how they use the meeting room screens, smart screens in the office.
Do you think it's more a cultural difference sort of thing, or is a hint towards where we'll see probably also in the rest of the world digital signage in a while? Is it something that we're going to adopt all over, or is it something that's very specific?
I think that in some ways, if you compare Middle East and Europe, there will be a shift in Europe as well to larger screens. Why? Because a screen is becoming not only an indicator. For example, the room is booked and the name of the company is participating in the meeting, but also like, for example, make your meeting longer. You use more and more NFC cards to check in. In some offices, even with this screen, you use your NFC employee card to be able to enter the room, for example. So the screen becomes much more comfortable when it's larger size. And in Middle East, they do not have the culture to go outside to have lunch. They usually have like huge office buildings where there are multiple companies allocated, and there is a catering service which is serving basically the whole building. I can better open the door and say, Sharisa, can I please have 2 coffees, here, rather than, push a button and Sharisa gets some kind of pop-up on her screen and starts preparing coffee for me, because she's 2 meters away, for example, behind the glass wall. And in Middle East, the catering is usually very far. You can't just call them. So you have to really indicate them. And, you can also, like, for example, like order sandwiches, order soups, or order meals. And you basically, like in McDonald's, choosing what you want to order. And when it's 10-inch screen is something not fun. And here in Europe, I don't think that very many companies really adopt this catering service options for the meeting rooms at least.
Absolutely, yeah. I was curious if this is something that you've seen also in other places, because for some of our clients, this is something that they want. So this is a feature that they want to integrate with the software, right? Say, I want to book a room, but I also want to book some resources, like a double monitor, or I want to book some specific tech, and I also want to be able to have catering. So yeah, it's not very common, obviously, but I think it's getting traction. Of course, there are some specifics, some specific differences also in the Middle East. The temperature outside is not that friendly during the day, so you don't just go out for a stroll and have lunch also. So that could be something that that impacts the way they decide to use them. I was just thinking when you mentioned that, you can just wave at your colleague and say, "Hey, can I get a coffee?" Um, do you see the tech and the way it evolves and develops more like cutting off some of the interactions that we have with other people and just translates everything into a push of a button? So it's more like a sort of a, if you allow the expression, more like a mechanical sort of interaction, digital, rather than the
But
human touch.
Cosmin, I can tell you a story. A long time ago, I used to work for a Taiwanese company. And though it was an open office, and basically I could wave to any of my colleagues or shout out from my desk, "Can I please have a quotation or the lead time?" All my product managers would say Skype, Skype. So basically, they were pushing to communicate through Skype. What I'm trying to say here, it really depends on the company culture. Some companies really prefer to have a pop-ups, and communicate digitally. And some companies really go authentic. They really try to preserve this authentic culture, which does not make it less digitalized, because in authentic culture you can appreciate a cup of coffee together. You can appreciate walk to a person, to a visitor, to pick up, to lead to a meeting room, or rather than give this person a sign, go there, and enter the room C13, for example. So it's really culturally dependent. But though staying old-fashioned, sustaining old-fashioned way of communication and personal contact, it does not require you to be less digitalized. In some ways, you can even be more digitalized as a company, because if, for example, I'm in the office, I really want to spend as much time with my colleagues by talking to them, communicating to them. But when I'm at home, I really appreciate that I can fully participate in all the meetings through smart screens, through, for example, seeing the notes that AI makes, during the meeting. So what they're discussing in the details, or if I miss the meeting, I can, for example, check the notes of the meeting that AI made.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking now, I'm a big fan of coffee. I like espresso very, very much. And I spent quite some time, investigating what new products are, new batches of coffee and so on. And a very good friend of mine shared this new business, new venture. Is like a robotic coffee maker. And you can install it basically in busy areas, in reception areas, airports, whatever. And there is an app, and you just order, and you say, "I'm going to be there in 5 minutes or so." So by the time you get there, just the robotic arm gives you the coffee, right? And I was just thinking about the whole process, right? Because the manual or the old-fashioned process means, you take the beans, you weight them, then you grind them, then, you temper, you play with them, then, eventually you get the coffee after you set the temperature right and everything. But presumably there is a robot doing that in probably half the time that I'm doing it, me not being a barista though. So I was thinking how this can both be a sort of a pull-off, for people who want the traditional interaction with the barista and they enjoy the coffee, with the human touch. But then again, it's a place where you can actually get in touch with others, at the, island where it works. You go just there, take your coffee, and they say, "Hey, there's Natalia. Let's have a chat." So somehow getting more digital or transforming even more is something that's probably unavoidable in many of the situations, but doesn't necessarily subtract of the human interaction. And thinking of the displays themselves, or the hardware, if you like, initially it was more like an information area, like in a train station, saying your train is on whatever, it's on the 6th platform and leaves in 10 minutes. But now it's interactive, and you were talking about the situation where you work from home, but you're able to be in the room somehow with your colleagues, right? Because it goes both ways. The screen, allows you to be there, and then you have this software on top of it, which makes the notes. You got the air, major points of discussion, things that you might have missed because you were in a different call and so on. So how was this transition from information more to interaction? Is it something more recent, or was it like gradually introduced?
Well, we are here constantly as ProDVX employees, busy developing our story, and our founders, we have a luck that they're still working at the company and they're still interacting with us and involved in the business and so on. And our founders like to tell us the stories, how long time ago, in 2011, they introduced the interactive Android screen on the market. And when they have been on the events, they really had a very, very big board above the screen, like you should touch it. Not you can, but you should, because it was absolutely uncommon for people to touch the screens. It's like, I remember even when you were a child, like in 90s, I assume, like your mom was
Thank you
pissed
very
at
much.
you if you were touching the screen, correct?
Yeah.
So
You
it
leave
wasn't,
marks on it, prints and stuff. Yeah.
it wasn't okay to touch the screen. You could even be punished. So it's like, it's like, of course, for my daughter now, who is 15, when the screen is not interactive, she is surprised, but it started only recently. So, and nowadays, it is normal for us to interact with the screen. But still in 2011, when ProDVX was founded, you really had to make a very, very big note. You should touch those screens.
Because it was a new habit, right? And it was a new way to consume technology. Prior to that, you were not supposed to mess with the screens because they were, the slimmer ones, not the ones that the cats slept on, right? So when the new TVs, they became slimmer, they were very flimsy. So if you press an iPad today, probably, punch some holes through them. So you were definitely not supposed to touch. But it's like people got so used to technology and to touchscreen technology, even that you see them, when they read a book like a print book, they want to see what the word means and start tapping on it, right? Because normally, if it's a Kindle or an iPad, if you click on the word, it says, what it means. It like pops up a dictionary. So obviously, people got more used to interacting with screens like that. How do you see it in the context of collaboration in the office? So that was a very good example with one of the team members working from a remote place. But how does it help around the office? So in the physical office.
Like, for example, I'm now in the meeting room, and I booked the room for 1 hour. But imagine our meeting is going to extend. I can just go outside and without going my Outlook, because it's off now because we're in the podcast, I can extend the meeting by 15 minutes or half an hour. So, of course, I can do it through the app, but I can also do it on the screen. I can also go, for example, in the details. If I see that the room is now occupied and I expect a customer visit, I can click on the screen and go in the details to see how far is it booked, when it is going to be available, for example. I can also, for example, ProDVX is not only about meeting room signage, it's also, for example, for control of the AV. And ProDVX panel PCs are often used as a control for AV. And like, for example, I can, by touching the screen, turn on the beamer or turn off the beamer or dim the lights or turn on the lights or make it brighter, like activate the microphone, mute myself, and so on and so on. So there are really a lot of possibilities with interactive screens in the office.
There was a very good introduction with with the founders of your company when they introduced the new product and asked people to touch it. So what's coming next? So what are we looking at in terms of hardware development? Um, I can talk about the software part because we're pretty much involved in that, but I'm curious to see your perspective in whatever interesting use cases you found that you're working towards and that you are implementing right now.
Well, let's put it this way. I believe that software is a driver for the development, because of course, as ProDVX, we are offering all kind of interactive panel PCs in different sizes, and of course we update the chipset that it performs better, that it's faster, that it does not hang, and that it's good quality, and that it can be cleaned. That was absolutely necessary during the corona, with the chlor, like the cleaning ladies.
Absolutely.
And it does not go white. But the software is a driver of the applications where those interactive screens can be used. Like, for example, to give you an idea, that ProDVX is used as a panel for all AV in the rooms. But now we have the cases where ProDVX is used as a panel for much, much more things, like smart offices, like activate your airco, put it down, put it up. It used to be buttons in the past, the same as security, turning on, turning off the security, as well as, for example, identifying yourself to enter a specific room. And now we actually had recently a project, I'm not going to give you name, as our screens, our interactive panel PCs to be used as an operating panel for the washing of the planes. This conveyor where you put in your normal car. Only they would put the certain airline would put the airplanes to push the button so that it washes the specific parts of the planes. I mean, and it is all possible nowadays, also, for example, for security, turn on, turn it off, turn on lights, etc. The software is getting there, and software allows to use it. And we, of course, as a hardware, have to make sure that our hardware is suitable to be used for the software. But you guys are going to develop the new applications and going to decide and develop the customer journeys.
True. I was thinking also about the use cases, so that's a good one with the airplanes. I didn't know about that one. It's it's a really cool example.
I was also surprised.
Well, whatever works. But I was thinking about how everything around the office pretty much changed lately. So the first major change was the introduction of the badge, right? So you had the badge and you have an access system, and your badge allowed you basically to enter.
It's actually very old. It's very old. People in 50s used to, with the paper, get the holes, that you are at the office today.
And it was also punching a hole in it, and that meant that you were there. So it was like check-in, if you want, but also gave you access to some areas. And that's a technology that you can still see, right? In many places, you'd see in the corporate world, you see people with the badges, right, hanging from the neck on, or they have one. But there's also the digital version. People are so used in having their phones around that basically a phone can take the place of a badge and much more than that. So you can also integrate and use the tablets that you guys have in the advanced screens, also for the security bit, which is very complicated in some areas, right? And then you don't rely on multiple devices. You have one where you have to check in with the badge, and you have a display where you have to do this. So people kind of got fed up with having 25 apps which basically do separate things but eventually serve one purpose. So in the quest of getting everything together, we as software providers want to integrate everything in one place, right? So we don't want people to download 25 apps just to be able to work. that would be against, what we are trying to achieve, right? So making it seamless. So from the hardware perspective, it's something that you see, right? So you see the displays taking more and more of the space of the workplace in terms of usage, right? So use cases, if you want.
Correct.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, when I've seen the first like big screen TVs in the reception areas, and they were running some beautiful videos, and I was like, oh, that would be so amazing if you could use this for meetings, right? Because you had those intercom systems, and they would be so slow, and they will hang all the time, and they will be a pain to use, and they were like, we're gonna turn the video off and just use voice, because that would have been a better option. This was obviously prior to Zoom and everything that kind of boomed during the corona and everything. So what's coming next from your perspective?
Well, on one side, I'm not a visionary to say what is coming next, but I guess we can all see that the artificial intelligence is winning more and more market. In some countries it's been forbidden, in other countries it's been used, in other countries it's very contradictory towards GDPR and so on, but it's still being used more and more. And I think that, of course, it will be adopted for smart offices in all kind of different ways, because like the way it is right now, I think it's like really on the edge, and contradictory to the laws of some countries. But I think that in different forms, it will be more and more common, and it will be more and more adopted by different softwares, by different companies. And at some point, it will also become normal, to have artificial intelligence in the office.
Yeah, obviously, technology is the first to develop stuff, and then the legal part has to play catch up. So regulate everything, make sure that they don't go, over some sensitive borders and so on. But this is something that we see all the time. An AI addition to a specific area of something, right? Anything from chatbots to more advanced interactions. Now, thinking of AI and its usage around, let's say, an office. So we've all seen some of the science fiction movies, right, where the hologram just pops up and say, "Hey, Natalia, I'm here to guide you in your first day of work, on the Star Trek Enterprise, whatever, right?" Mm-hmm. So how far are we in terms of using the hardware to get there? So probably the software.
Those holograms already exist. Those holograms exist. It's not something new. I'm sorry, but I've seen it like in 2002. Somewhere at CeBIT still in Hanover.
Sure.
And
but around the offices, I mean, it's.
I have also noticed a specific trend, at least here in the Netherlands. I'm not sure if it is, for example, the same way in Romania or in UK or in Germany, but there are more and more companies who want to go old-fashioned, traditional, authentic ways. Like starting with the bakeries, who all of a sudden start baking the bread according to the recipe of 1810, ending up with the companies and cafes and restaurants, who really want to avoid all the digitalization and, but it looks like they do, but on the other hand, they have actually more digitalization than you can imagine, than they had 5 years ago. So therefore, I'm not sure about that, artificial colleague who is going to welcome me on my first day. If it's going to happen, well, maybe in some companies it will. I think that it should be more digitalization which is logical for you and for me, which makes me more comfortable, which brings me the right company culture, which brings me the right comfort, which makes it easy for me, to perform my tasks and to be more efficient, rather than to make it fancy and to make it special, like with the artificial colic, like example you gave.
Absolutely. So I like very much your approach. It's very down to earthy, and it's also it kind of makes sense, right? Why complicate or overcomplicate things just for the sake of having some new tech, or just for just to brag that you have a new thingy that you've added to your tool stack. I'm thinking now about smart offices overall. In some parts of the world, they design like that because they're new, right? But in some parts of the world, you can't really build new things, right? So you have to use the old buildings and be very mindful of the additions or the changes that you make over there. How do you see integrating the modern technology in such spaces? So if I have an old building, let's say, and I want to transform it into like top-notch office, where should I start?
This is what you do. But my husband is an architect, and it's his specialization to take old-fashioned buildings from 1800 and make it a modern, so that it looks like the same outside, and inside it's stuffed with all kind of modern technology and modern approach. It's called loft. This is like people do for years and they love doing, and this is like the best thing you can have. And I think that making it, keeping it old from outside and saving and preserving the culture does not make it less digitalized. Digital technology in the office can be applied maybe even better than in the modern building, because you have to be smart by using the office for the smart meetings, and all of a sudden, you have got the creativity which makes it all possible and cool. I think this is actually the art, and there are specialists on that, to combine old and new and make it like really attractive. This is also, this is like the difference between millennials and the snowflakes population, etc. No, you really have to make all those different populations to work together, to be efficient with each other, and to accept technology. Because, like, for example, I don't know, maybe my 15 years old daughter would be okay to talk to artificial colleague, or artificial student when he goes to college, to ask you questions. I won't accept. But when we end up in the office, you have got a colleague of 21 and you have got colleague of 60, and you have to make it comfortable for all of them.
I just nailed it with the example. I didn't know about your husband, but yeah, this is basically the way it happens with the company as well, right? So it's not a much different example from the one that you mentioned. So you get a company and you want to preserve some things, right? You want to preserve collaboration, you want to preserve creativity and so on, and it just shop around for technology and for things that can make it happen and make it more efficient. It's basically the same as with all buildings, right? So you want to preserve whatever it's working and whatever is best there, and it's worth preserving, while adding everything that people need to actually make it work, and make it work as smooth as possible and keep everybody happy, because this is something that we should also take into account, right? People from different generations have different needs, and you basically have to accommodate all those at the same time.
Exactly. No, because the 65 years old ones are actually the wise ones with most experience, and this is something where young generations can learn from, but also vice versa. The 65 years old colleagues can learn from 20 years old colleagues, and it's like something I think can be beautifully combined together. And going authentic and going old-fashioned does not at all mean taking distance from the digitalization.
Absolutely. So it's kind of more towards the level of which it's visible, right? Because underlying there will be layers and layers of technology. Even if we look at the building and say, oh, it's an old-fashioned castle from the 1600s, it's probably got electricity in it and heating and everything to make it comfortable for whoever is using it these days. So just as a parallel, same with offices. One thing I was thinking about when discussing office and collaboration is feedback. And to me, sometimes I feel that feedback is not that particularly well delivered through remote collaboration tools, such as we are talking right now. And I have some feedback to give you. So, where do you see technology taking front stage here and helping in both ways communication? Or
You mean
do you think
feedback on the meeting we had, or feedback of
No,
generally?
feedback in general. I mean, in the office. So you have somebody working remotely, you have somebody in the office. So do you feel technology is doing a good enough job in delivering feedback? So just to give you an example, if we would work next to one another and you'd say, hey, Cosmin, well, how do you feel about this? I would just, look over my shoulder, look at whatever you've done and said, it works with me, right? Or I would make this bluer, let's say. Do you think technology is well enough developed as a medium for that, or there are some things which get lost in translation or along the way?
There are definitely very many things lost in translation, especially if you have to deal with the different cultures, like how Eastern European would react and how French would react. You don't recognize the reaction very often, while in life you would pick it up much better. So therefore, I still believe meeting each other on a regular basis, your colleagues, your boss, your team, is important. I understand that in some companies it's not possible anymore. Other companies, totally close down the offices and have a tiny, like for the legal registration location, and the rest work from the office. But I mean, those companies also probably adapted to the digital communication in a way they learned each other. But for me personally, I like working from home, and I also like being in the office.
So
and
hybrid works best for you?
For me personally, yes. I'm trying to stay open-minded. I mean, if you are a production working in production manufacturing, it's pretty much mission impossible to work from home. Or if you are a programmer, a designer, you probably prefer to work from home. So there is there is no black and white. There are very many shades of gray in between.
Absolutely. Do you see any potential disruptions in let's take an example, or a more extreme example, if you like. So using technology all over the workplace. Do you see any pitfalls there or any dangers lurking around?
Of course, internet is down. You're lost.
Yeah, that was the first that came to mind to me. Yeah.
Now, Planet of the Apes, I watched it a long time ago, and I still remember when a woman was ready to kill the whole civilization for 15 minutes of charging of her phone so that she can watch the pictures of her died husband and children, on this phone. Let's not go that far, but
Sure.
If you have got Microsoft 365 and if you don't have Chrome, yeah. If you don't have internet, you don't have Word, you don't have Excel, you don't have anything, no email, nothing, So the only thing you can sit and stare on your screen.
Yeah, and wait for it to come back, right? But apart from such an obvious disruptions, right? And you normally have like redundant lines and things, so you make sure that if it ever happens, it's not that difficult. Do you see it somehow? And just to give more examples, so some are very afraid that AI is going to take over their jobs. Do you think employing a lot of technology around the office would make some of the interactions less important or less meaningful, and kind of transform it into a more
No,
digital
actually,
experience? Or
like people being late was one of my threats. Like that, many, not many, but some of the jobs would be lost to people because there are screens, because receptions, digital receptions, digital navigations, etc., etc. But I don't think it will happen fully, because I honestly and truly see that at least Dutch society in very many ways is trying to go back to normal. They call it normal, authentic, old-fashioned. And I believe that especially with this artificial intelligence, it will be there. And I think uh, people, and especially programmers, are smart enough to integrate it into the solution without actually threatening us. And it's great thing to use. It's great thing to make to use to our advantage. But I think that even in the beginning of this year, very many woke up and said, hey, till here and no further, please, so to make sure that the text is written by a professional story writer is still much more attractive to you, Cosmin, and to me than a text written by artificial intelligence.
right, and to take your point a little bit further, I think if we develop AI and similar technologies far enough, they will free some of our time, so we can actually go to whatever you referred to earlier, which were like basic values and interaction and the social things that we need, right? So you would
Minutes
just
making.
outsource to it.
Yeah, I like we have in our office artificial intelligence taking minutes. I mean, it saves hours of time for certain
Precisely.
employees. It's a great thing.
Yeah, that's happening. So it saves time that you can otherwise use for something else, and maybe you can use for the meaningful stuff. So as we like to preserve, beautiful buildings and places, we also like to preserve fine moments of interaction, right, with one another. So why not leave technology to undertake some of the efforts, so we can focus on those eventually?
I totally agree. I mean, we shouldn't let it go and get out of the hand. But, I mean, if somebody developed artificial intelligence, the other person can tame it, right?
Yeah. So I would agree with you. People have developing it as smart guys, so, and ladies, of course. So I do hope that they had every checkpoint in place, so it doesn't happen. Yeah. Fantastic talking to you, Natalia, and looking forward to seeing whatever you guys bring next to the workplaces all over the world, and really curious about more case studies such as the ones with the airplanes. I'm really curious about that one.
Well, ProDVX is really developing new markets, and we really, I think you will see really new projects, something new for you, and going away from buttons to interactive screens. So this is the way, and this is where we see our future.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us, and hope you'll join our podcast soon.
I definitely did, Cosmin. Thank you.